Hi guys, this is a question, and this question is actually based on the topic trigonometry. So, before you can solve this kind of question, given sine theta to be 7/9, we have to find cos theta, 9 cos theta. So, before you can solve this particular question, there are some things you just have to understand about trigonometry. So, you must know what the sine is, what the cosine is, and what the tangent is. Now, the best way to describe the sine, the cosine, and the tan is by using a right angle triangle when it comes to geometry, when it comes to trigonometry, basically. Now, let me see if I'm able to. Let's just take this as a right angle triangle where this angle here is 90 degrees. So, given that particular angle to be 90 degrees, that's the actual reason we call it a right angle triangle. Then, the sum of the other angles will actually be equal to 90. Yes, to 90. The sum of the other two angles will be equal to 90 because the total sum of angles in a triangle is just 180. Though I will drop a lecture on that very soon, by which you can know the sum of the angles in a polygon. Now, it depends on the angle you're working on. Let's call this angle theta, and let's call this alpha. Now, let's name this side A, let's name this side B, and let's name this side C. Now, if you want to know what your sine theta is, your sine of any angle that you are working with is the opposite. That is the side that opposes that angle. So there is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse, and that is your sine. Now, in this sense, sine of any angle now that you're working, I didn't put the angle, I didn't put maybe theta, maybe alpha. So we'll still talk about that. The cos is the adjacent. Adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, and the tan is the opposite divided by the adjacent. So those are three basic properties or identities. Now try and know them. You see, these three, when we have sine to be opposite divided by the hypotenuse, we write it as SOH. When cos is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, write it as CAH. And tan is the opposite divided by the adjacent. So we just refer to this as SOHCAHTOA, and that's just a basic thing to remember it. Now, concerning the triangle that I drew, If you are working with angle theta, then there is this particular side that opposes theta, the angle theta now, and the side is A. So if you are talking about the opposite of angle theta, then you will have the side A divided by your hypotenuse C, and that is your sine theta. Then your cos theta, once you know that this is your opposite, like A is your opposite, C is actually your hypotenuse because the hypotenuse is the longest side of a right angled triangle. Then the third side is the adjacent. So you see, if you are now to talk about cos theta now, you will have B divided by C, which is your adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. Now if it is tan theta now, in this sense, then you will have your opposite, which is A, divided by the adjacent, and that is B. So that's what you have. And now, assuming you are dealing with angle alpha and not theta this time around, then you know when we're dealing with theta, our opposite was A. Now in this sense, if you're dealing with alpha, our opposite will be B. It will be side B. So our opposite now will now be our sine alpha will now be B divided by the hypotenuse, which is C. Cos alpha will be A divided by the hypotenuse, that is adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And our tan alpha will be the opposite, that is B divided by the adjacent, A. So that is the basic way to know this. There is a formula that relates the three sides together, and we call that the Pythagoras theorem, but I won't be talking about that in this particular lecture. So this is just a basic introduction to solve the question that we have here. Now, given sin theta to be 7/9, then we know that the opposite, let us try and draw a right angle triangle for it. So we know that the opposite is, okay, let's draw the right angle triangle first. So we know that let's assume this to be our angle that we're working with, calling theta. Now this is our opposite because we know we are talking about sine, which is opposite divided by the adjacent. Oh, in fact, I think this lecture I still have to talk about the Pythagoras theorem anyway. Now let me quickly go back to that and talk about it. Now the C now, the hypotenuse, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square of the opposite plus the square of the adjacent plus the square of the adjacent, and this is what we call the Pythagoras theorem, but I will expatiate more in some videos that I will drop very soon. So in order to get this particular side, call it X now, which is our adjacent. We don't know what it is, but we know that when we square our hypotenuse according to the formula, this will give us the square of the opposite plus the square of the adjacent. So in this sense, we know that 81 will give us 49 plus x squared. So at this point, we just have to subtract what's it called? We subtract 41 from both sides, and if we take the subtraction, taking away 49 from 81, what are we left with? Okay, we are left with 2 here, and here we are left with 3. So we are just left with 32, and that is x squared. So that is x squared. So for us to get our x, this is telling us that we have to take the square root of both sides. So our x, when we take the square root of both sides, will give us the square root of 32. So that is our x. So that's telling us this adjacent that we are looking for is the square root of 32. Now we will come back to this question and find 9 cos theta. So cos theta is simply the adjacent, which is the square root of 32 divided by the hypotenuse, which is 9, and we are multiplying it by 9, don't forget. So the 9 can either multiply it from the right, or also multiply from the left, or also multiply from the right. So if we multiply it by 9, then what do we have? We simply have the square root of 32. So we can just take this we can simplify this further. Let's see. So this is the square root of 16 multiplied by 2. That gives 32. We all know that. So the square root of 16 is 4. And if we take the multiplication by 2, we just have 4 root 2. Don't mind how I worked. I'm sorry. So this is the answer. So if you find this helpful, you can just share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. While subscribing, don't forget to press the notification bell. Then you get the notification when I drop a new video. Thank you.